And we are live.
Good afternoon. This is 1:30 p.m. Monday, April the 5th. Real Property Committee is convening. And we are here in person at City Hall. All the committee members are John Moy, Kevin Popson, and myself, Rusty Streetman. And we also have city administration and other guests in attendance as well. It is also a virtual meeting due to COVID-19 pandemic, and the public, of course, can join in by clicking on to the link. We would like, at this point here, I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly notified of this meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Second order of business, approval of previous meetings minutes. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, next order of business is citizens' comments. Do we have any citizens' comments, Ron or Desiree? We do not have any citizens' comments for this committee meeting today. And next order of business is marina tenant comments.
No marina tenant comments have been received, Chair.
Okay, no marina tenant comments have been received as well. We'll move on now to old business. First order of business is 5A, which is an update on Marina Dock Rehabilitation Project. And I'll turn things over to Desiree to take from here.
All righty. Well, we have with us Kirby Marshall, who's a project manager for both the bulkhead and the dock rehabilitation project. And I'm going to turn it over to him to give us an update on both where we are on both projects, schedule, and what we should be expecting for the next several weeks and prior to hopefully being completed by June.
Thank you. So as Desiree mentioned, there's two projects going on really, the bulkhead and then the marina dock replacement. The bulkhead work is largely complete. The subcontractor, Phillips Industrial, should be set to fully demobilize here within a week or so. They have essentially completed all of the work except for the very, very bottom of some select areas where they're working with the tides to complete the coating. They did go back and look at the area that you had observed, Mr. Streetman, to see what they could do about that. They actually cleaned it and recoated that area. So the spots that you saw and the little rust stains that you saw have been touched up, recoated, and it looks great. I've seen it myself, so it looks good. I would expect to see some rust spotting throughout. There's small little pieces of rust or iron ore that will seep out from behind the bulkhead. So we'll see some staining over time. It's not anything that I think is deleterious to the outside face of the bulkhead. It's just things that are kind of seeping through from the backside. But overall, we've observed it very carefully and feel that Phillips has done a good job. So that's good news. And it also looks great. So that's nice too. With regard to the marina portion of the project and the docks, there have been 2 shipments of floating docks that have been received from the dock manufacturer in Canada. The first shipment of polytub pontoons, the plastic floats, which will be bolted to the bottom of the docks, has also arrived, and Salmon's Dredging is assembling those structures in their yard in Charleston. So they will continue to assemble the structures as they are able, and they're set to mobilize over here in a few weeks, where they'll start with the demolition of the docks out towards the mouth of Morgan Creek by the Intracoastal, which we call the restaurant dock and the face dock. They'll demolish those first and work their way back to the boat ramp. We had a meeting with Salmon's Dredging and Brian Berrigan at the marina about a week and a half ago to discuss the schedule. Salmon's is in close contact with the marina operator so that we can schedule the closure of those docks prior to demolition so that the marina manager can relocate boats and make sure everything's out of the way when Salmon's comes in to do the work. We have the final submittal package on the dock design and pile design for the marina in hand. I just got that on Friday afternoon at about 5 o'clock. Haven't looked at it in detail yet, but I scanned it. They've addressed all our comments, so that's good. That's the final engineering package for the floating dock and pile system. We scrutinized that very carefully. to ensure that the pile design, the final pile design for the floating docks that the dock manufacturer put forward was suitable for the environmental conditions at the site. And we really looked hard at the outside of the restaurant dock and the face dock out by the waterway where that damage had occurred on the existing docks a year or so ago. We wanted to make sure that those docks were resilient and would be sustainable in that environment. And we feel really good about the submittals that we got back. So it was a process of back and forth. We really, I think, grilled them pretty hard to make sure that everything was sufficient. The pile count that they originally proposed stayed the same. However, they upped the grade of pile. The strength of the piles was increased to account for that higher level of loading out there on those docks. So feel really good. They went from a grade 2 pile to a grade 3 pile, which just has a stronger material properties, which is good. That should yield some nice service to the marina. So
Will there be additional charge or cost for us on that?
no,
Or is that
sir,
just an upgrade that they did?
that was their responsibility to meet or exceed the performance criteria that we set forth in the
Right.
plans and bid documents. The grade 2 wouldn't do it. So it was on them to provide something that would on their dime. And that's why they've gone to the grade 3.
Okay.
So I think we're going to be in good shape.
Good.
One thing that I did ask Salmons to look at, however, with regard to pricing and costs, the dock that was damaged out there a year or so ago, one of the existing concrete piles either fell over or snapped and broke in half and is resting on the sea floor underneath or kind of in between the restaurant dock and the face dock. It's laying out there. So we asked Salmons to give a price to locate and remove that pile to make sure that it's not in the way when they go to drive the new piles. I haven't got that number back, but I expect it's going to be very, very small. And they'll do that work as they're doing the demolition work. So it'll be very cost effective just to make sure it's out of the way and won't cause any damage to anything. Things are going along well. I think we're in good shape.
Good. Kevin or John, any questions or
Uh,
feedback?
Yeah, well, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The coating on the bulkhead, is there like a standard or required thickness? And have we tested to assure that we have that thickness sort of throughout or on an average?
Yes, so the specifications for the bulkhead coating called for a certain, they call it, this is more technical than I'm used to explaining. Some of the other guys in our office can explain it better, but there's a certain level of thickness or mils of thickness that's required on the coating. That was specified. There has been a testing protocol that's been implemented throughout the recoating process to test various areas of the bulkhead to ensure that at least that minimum thickness has been applied throughout. And we have those test results in the office. We've been paying very close attention to that, particularly as Salmons has been requesting payment every month.
Right.
So we'll look at the test results to make sure that the minimum thickness is on there and it meets or exceeds the specifications. Yes.
Gotcha.
Great
Thank
question.
Yeah, thank you for being here, Kirby, as always. With the kind of full submittals now being submitted, do we have to do any additional permitting with any governmental entities or anybody?
No, I don't believe so. All the permits are in place. There was nothing extraordinary in the submittals that caused us to change the project in any meaningful way.
Mhm.
There have been some slight, I would expect a very slight shift of the base dock and the restaurant dock waterward out into Morgan Creek by maybe a foot or so from where we had designed it, just based on how the gangways will have to articulate and tie into the existing bulkhead. Those types of shifts are normal for marine construction. We will document that and submit that to the agencies as part of the as-built conditions. What I have been very careful to instruct the contractor about is not encroaching 1 millimeter out into the intracoastal waterway construction offset because of the issues that we've seen in other areas of the marina based on that. So we've held that line very firm. They might have to scoot a little bit out into the creek, but I don't.
Okay.
It's pretty common.
Good.
Good question.
I've got one other.
Yes, please.
Just related to the demolition with that piling that was there, and understand it's likely to be a relatively nominal cost and relative in this project is, anyway. So just, I guess the question about how, we anticipated that, because I don't know if the condition we were in when the bids were, issued, I believe that piling was already down. Did we just not consider that in when we specified, here's what you need to include in your bid? Did we just not think through, okay, we're going to have to get rid of that? We might have to get rid of that piling. Does my question make sense?
Yeah, it does. And at that time, I don't think we were exactly clear whether or not it had been fully removed or demoed as part of the remediation work to the dock. And I know there was some insurance back and forth there based on the storm damage. We didn't include it in the bid documents.
Mhm.
We knew it was there. I see that as a very minor $1,000 or $2,000 incidental effort. So we didn't include that.
Any other questions?
Lastly, I guess just for the residents watching, but what's the timeline again when we looking at completion?
Our goal right now, and I haven't got an updated schedule from the contractor, Salmons, I've requested that. And now that we have the full final approved submittals, that will enable them to give us that information. We have been holding firm to getting this thing done before the July 4th holiday weekend, just to make sure the marina is free and clear and that Salmons is fully demobilized from the site by that busy time. That's the goal. I suspect they'll be able to handle that. All of the equipment for the utilities in terms of the power pedestals and the transformers that will go out onto the docks, some of the cables and materials and things like that, those have already been procured and they're here in storage in Charleston at the electrician's warehouse. So that once the docks go in, everything's going to go very, very quickly. So I think we're in good shape for that date. It's going to be, I know it's been a process to get to this point, and we haven't seen a lot of movement or action out at the marina other than the bulkhead work, which is tangible and we can see it and it looks good. I think everybody will be surprised how quickly the docks get demolished and the new docks go back in. It's going to happen when it occurs. It's going to occur very, very quickly, which is going to be nice and something good and tangible to see. And the new docks are going to look great. So it's going to be good.
Great.
Good. Well, that will be good. I mean, we get to the point where we can actually see those docks going in, and that visitors to the marina, residents and visitors alike, can see some real progress. You know, because not everybody's going to go down and look at the bulkhead. They don't even know maybe that's being coated. But once we see that kind of work going on with the docks, I'm sure people will be very pleased, and I know we will be. And I certainly hope we can meet or even complete that project even before July the 4th, if at all possible. Any other comments or questions?
I do. I just
Yes,
want to update you on something relevant to the overall dock project. I've asked Kirby to discuss with Salmons the installation of some very minor aesthetic improvements to what we call the T-dock that's leased to the new restaurant tenants. As you all recall, part of the lease negotiation was that the city was going to make some replacements of missing pontoons and some bumper stops along all the their section of the dock. So Salmons, while they're on site, we will figure that would be the most cost effective and time effective solution. So we're working on that internally to get that completed before they leave and before the restaurant starts operating.
So yeah, at your request, I met with Salmons Dredging out at the marina to look at the restaurant's portion of the intracoastal dock. And it's in not great shape. It just hasn't been maintained in a number of years. And I think the previous tenant didn't, I don't want to say neglected it, but they didn't put a lot of TLC into it. So it does require some maintenance to make it adequately serviceable. Some outside 2x12 fender boards, those are, a lot of those have been damaged. So fender board work, and then the plastic rub rail for when the boats come in, that needs to be replaced, and some pile guide rollers that allow the pile guides to roll up and down on the piles. Those have just worn down. So I walked the entire dock and with Salmons and talked about the various different things that needed to be not improved, but maintained on the dock to provide a minimum level of maintenance to make the dock adequately serviceable for its intended use. So we were very careful not to, suggest any radical improvements or anything like that,
Right.
but just basic maintenance. I expect to have that cost back that cost proposal back very soon. I'll provide that to you, but it should be cost efficient since they're going to be on.
What a novel idea, ongoing maintenance.
Well, and you may
Thank you.
recall, as part of the budget process, we did include in our forecast for FY23, the improvements to that dock.
Right.
They are included in the permit that we have on hand, and that permit is good for 5 years. So that'll be if you call the second phase of a marina dock rehabilitation project, is dealing with that section of dock, which is a lot, newer than the 30-year-old docks that we're replacing now, which was the main priority. So that's coming down the pipeline in a few years as well.
And we have that in place for 2023 at this point?
Correct. Mhm.
Okay, good. All right. Anything else?
Thank you.
Good update, Kirby.
Yep,
Thank you
thanks.
very much. Appreciate it.
We'll keep you updated.
Please do.
Great.
All right. Item 5B under old business is the update on the proposed ADA compliant dual purpose beach boardwalk at 42nd Avenue beach access. So Desiree, do you want to kick that off as well?
Absolutely. In your packets, you have the drawing that we have secured of the proposed improvements to the 42nd Avenue boardwalk. As you all know, we have shifted the concept from an elevated boardwalk to a different material that will still allow for ADA compliance and accessibility for folks with physical challenges. We've talked about needing to get DHEC's sort of sign off on this plan. We've done that. They're not requiring the city to submit a different permit or a permit to install this, which we would just be replacing the existing Moby mat there with this new material. There has been some accretion over the past several years, and that has allowed us to extend this material farther than where the current Moby mat is located. The allowable seaward extent of where this type of material can go, it's still the same. It cannot extend past the seaward toe of the primary dune or where there's vegetation, but because of the accretion, it has allowed us to move farther into the ocean, if you will. There's still going to be an area between the hard sand and where the boardwalk material ends. It's soft sand, and that's always somewhat challenging, but we're limited in what we can do by DHEC. We talked about it this morning about reaching out to DHEC to see if we can extend or move farther into the seaward end of the boardwalk. That sort of what we call the observation area or resting area. It's shown in the drawings as a turnaround. That's not what's intended to be. It's a 15 by 15 area for people to move away from the path to either rest there or watch the ocean. So we're going to reach out and see whether DHEC would allow us moving that farther into their jurisdictional line. Currently, where it stands, it's where right before their jurisdictional line is. So if we extend it past that line, the question to DHEC is whether or not the city has to submit a permit. And if that's the case, that just complicates everything threefold. And we're just going to have to figure out what you know, if we want to move forward in that direction, because it would add time and potentially cost to doing that. Maybe not cost, but certainly time if we have to go through the permitting process. But we'll put a call in, as you all recall from the drawings, and we were talking about this concept. It's a modular type of material. So changing it from one location to the other shouldn't really complicate the installation process at all. So I think it's just going to be a matter of permitting and DHEC allowing it. After we finalize that, we hopefully get feedback from y'all. We have the RFP drafted, so it'll be a matter of just putting it out for a few weeks and getting contractors to bid on this work so we can get it installed. Did I miss anything?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, John.
Sorry, just a quick question on that last part. I don't know exactly how modular it is in terms of how changeable it is in the future, but just I get maybe a comment more than anything else. If we feel like there's going to be a significant amount of time added for DHEC to move up that area, would it be possible to potentially install as is, as drawn for speed, while still pursuing the advancement of that observation rest area with DHEC kind of concurrent with the installation?
We believe that that's not going to be an issue.
We decided just today that even if if there's a possibility that they will tell us that it's okay and you don't need to go through the permitting process, and if that's the case, we'll just move it. If they tell us no, it's going to trigger the need for an additional permit, we could go ahead and file that request, install it, just as you said, as it's shown on the drawings. And then once we get a final determination from OCRM, if it's in the affirmative, we could just, with our own manpower, I think, move it down.
Great.
To wherever they authorize it. It's not I will tell you, it's currently kind of midway down. If you think about, the intended purpose of giving people a midpoint place to get out of the way, its current location does pretty well for that. You get it too far down one side, then, you're not kind of equidistant depending on if a truck needs to use it and you've got a long way to go to get to that resting point. So it's actually not a bad location now for that purpose, but I think for people who might want to use it to just kind of stay and rest for a longer time in that spot, it probably would be better to get it closer to the ocean.
Yeah, that's the point that was brought up by one of our residents today when he wrote an email with some very good points on it, that if someone that's wheelchair bound, if they have an area there where they can just kind of sit and observe where it is currently, they probably couldn't see much
That's
at
correct.
that point. So it would be good if we could try to accommodate that as much as possible.
I can't imagine the cost being that much greater. Why don't we just add another one?
Do a midpoint one and then do
Leave this one where it's at, and then
just
if we
add
can
one?
get DHEC, add one on the other side, closer, to the beach or whatever.
kind of one midway, one down.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be a budget buster, I would
No,
imagine.
I wouldn't think so. No.
Would that take additional permitting though to get that done? Or is that something?
We
can
will
do?
get the permitting answer here, either it's go ahead and do it, or, it's a 60-day window. We would just need to be, we would want to guard against ordering two and then only being able to use one.
Oh, right.
Would be the potential. So if we get the news from OCRM that they want to require, or they think it does require an additional permit, that might give us pause for ordering two.
Gotcha.
If they tell us it's a go and you don't need an additional permit, then I think, we could go ahead and add a second one.
It's just where
Okay.
that's the question.
Right.
So I do have another question.
Sure. Go ahead,
Um,
Kevin.
Douglas, right at the end of the street, you're looking at an 8-foot contour elevation. And then as you get to the turnaround, you're right around 10 foot. I don't know the distance from the street to that turnaround, but is that too much of a slope for ADA compliant?
What-
And then on the other side, it ends at a 6.5 or maybe even a little bit lower. So from 10 to 6.5, are we ADA compliant? I
So
guess?
we will need to keep it less than 20-1 to avoid handrails and guardrails. Basically, if you're that flat, 20-1 or flatter, you avoid all of that. So we will, that's going to be part of the bidding process. We will have the expectation that before they put down the matting, that they will get it to all parts of it to a 20-1 or less slope before they put it down. So that's
Got it.
something that we'll want to be sure they get right from the onset.
Gotcha. Okay.
We want to avoid,
Right.
ramps and handrails and things of that nature.
Good.
Any thoughts in regards to additional handicap parking in that area? Desiree?
Yes, that was part of the discussion early on when this was brought forward to real property as a good project to submit to Greenbelt funding. We have initiated those discussions with DOT, would require a type of encroachment permit, and for them to weigh in on the location. But yes, the goal has always been to try to increase the number of handicap parking spaces in that area, not only on 42nd Avenue, but in other locations around the island that may be feasible to do so.
Okay, great. One other point that Dr. Smiley brought up to me today, I talked to him on the phone, but this is probably something that I'm sure that that whoever constructs this, is it Furman? Oh, that's the landscape.
That's the design.
Yeah. But Jim brought up the grade of stainless steel fasteners, screws, bolts, however that's done, and that there are different grades of stainless steel, and we ought to really make sure that we have the ones that are the least corrosive. And that's a good point, but I'm sure that's something you probably already factored in, Douglas.
Yes, that is a discussion we've had with the mat supplier. That, the intent, because they do make the mat for all over different environments, but we wanted specifically the the most salt tolerant stainless, and it's going to be nylon and high grade stainless steel.
Okay.
Something to just add, I did see an email about this project, and when I read the email, I was hopeful that Jim did not get the impression from whatever he was looking at that what was going to be installed, because I know he's been an advocate of going down to the hard pack sand, and we've obviously wanted that too, but we have requested a permit from OCRM. We've been denied that permit request to extend down. We have then circled back with them and requested clarification if anything had changed, because we requested the permit probably 4 years ago. Circle back and just said, hey, has anything changed? Could we potentially request another permit or somehow get permission to go farther down? And they indicated that they had actually codified the language to make it clear that we could not extend any farther than the seaward toe of the dune. So something in his note made me think that he may not be crystal clear that there is still going to be a sizable gap between the end of this ramp and the hard pack sand, which is something we've been trying to, get resolution with OCRM, but we've been unsuccessful really in getting anywhere with that. It will be longer, as Desiree mentioned. The primary dune is pushed out, so the path will be longer. But unfortunately, we're not going to be able to make that connection still.
Right. I in my discussions with him, I don't think that he, has any illusion that there's not going to be soft sand between that and the hard pack and the end of the
Okay.
boardwalk. So, in fact, he was very complimentary about everything that had been done, the efforts that had been made by yourself and Desiree and others to getting to the point where we are now. So,
Yeah. Okay. Good. I just hope that he didn't see something differently than the way it really is.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Douglas.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
Douglas.
Good update. All right, item 5C under old business, update on the proposed public dock and green space at the Isle of Palms Marina. Anything to update us with, Desiree?
Not a whole lot. As you all know, we are in the, still during a litigation process with the former tenant, who's now a holdover tenant, has refused to leave the premises despite the city's notifying them that their lease was not going to be renewed prior to the deadline per the lease. So, those challenges are still in existence today. We have received, I mentioned to you all last month that Kelly, Douglas, and I were still working through the design and incorporating some of the feedback that we received from the community, and also starting to nail down some prices so that we know what we're looking at. And we talked about also an effort to pursue some fundraising or some donations from residents towards this project. And I had a brief conversation with the chair of Ways and Means, and there's not a whole lot of update or progress on that end, but him and I have sort of connected on that and talked about setting a time to really digest and kind of put together a plan on how that could work. It's been done in other communities, so there's a blueprint, and we're not reinventing the wheel. It's something that should be pretty simple to set up, and we'll be working through once we're done with the budget process, getting to that point. But in the FY22 draft budget that you're going to be discussing, we've been discussing, and you'll be ratifying by the end of June, we did include a provision and a placeholder for the costs associated with making improvements to that dock and to the green space. We've included, if I'm not mistaken, it's either 120,000 or 150,000. The preliminary cost that we received from Kelly as part of our efforts to solidify some numbers, they came out at 155,000. We've put in a placeholder in the budget, knowing that it could be offset by some donations from residents, and also by some funding from the Greenbelt program. This project is much lower in terms of cost. The 42nd Avenue ADA project is lower in cost than what we had originally planned and submitted when it was contemplated as an elevated boardwalk. So we have some funds still available there that the city could tap into for the public dock and green space project at the marina. The city also has a tree fund that's meant for beautification efforts around the city that the city is also has available. But other than having some updated numbers on what the cost would be per the design that's been presented to you all, we don't have a whole lot of updates other than continuing to work to ensure that at a time when the court is able to reconvene and rule on the eviction proceedings, we're able to move rather quickly to get that contracted and constructed. But it'll be somewhat of a process, something that have to be bidded out. But just knowing all of those restrictions, we're trying as much as we can to have a plan in place to be able to act quickly.
That would be the goal, to have a plan in place,
Mhm.
just gets resolved. Kevin or John, any questions or comments?
Quick, I know a months back, we had talked about making sure that Brian and the restaurant folks have seen this plan and gave us any comments, good, bad, indifferent. Have we gotten any comments or update from either of those?
Not recently. It's something that's pending that we have to, now that we have a revised plan. We did share with them the first one that had this grandiose sort of entrance concept. We've been dealing with other more pressing issues with the restaurant and the marina manager related to, more immediate things. So that hasn't really been discussed at length, but certainly will be part of the process for us to make sure that everybody's on the same page about what the city's intent is for that area.
We got plenty of time. Thanks.
Okay, any other comments? Input?
No.
Thank you, Desiree. Appreciate that. Item 6, new business. We have no new business today. Item 7, miscellaneous business. Our next meeting date is 1:30 PM, Monday, May the 3rd, 2021. Desiree, did you have something you wanted to say?
I do. I want to add something under miscellaneous
Okay.
business, not for discussion because it's not on the agenda, but just as a heads up and make sure that it's in your radar and you'll be seeing it next month. The noise agreement between the city and Morgan, and the new restaurant tenant needs to be ratified. We discussed it earlier this year as something that needed to be in place before they start operating. I've sent them the draft of the noise agreement that's been in place and was in place with the former tenant. And, I shared it with you all in case you had any specific input that you'd like to see included or any other matter that should be addressed in that agreement. But I'll be working with the tenants throughout the month to get you all a final draft of that noise agreement by next month so we can get it ratified. Currently, their schedule has them starting operating outdoors sometime in July. So I don't want to, I want to get that done in May ahead of that. So just if you want to call me, if you have any questions or have any thoughts, just have that in the back of your mind as something that we'll be discussing and expecting some type of action from the committee to bring to full council in May.
Okay, great. John?
Just make sure that doesn't take 2 readings or anything because
No.
it's just a.
Mhm.
Thanks.
That's just one approval and
Mhm.
it's done.
Good.
Well, and to add to that, Desiree, I guess I'm within order here to do that, but I have had discussion with the owners down at the restaurant, and it looks like they're pretty excited about things that are beginning to happen inside, with the plans. And I know, again, the public can't really see anything because outside it still looks the same,
Mhm.
but there's significant progress going on down there. So it'd be good maybe next month too, if we have a really good update
Mhm.
from the restaurant
Mhm.
owners to, for our committee
Mhm.
to really take a look at.
And the other thing, just on that vein, just want to update you under miscellaneous that you all recall that the city committed to making some improvements to what's going to be the employee lot. The area behind the green fence, there's no green fence there, but everybody knows where the green fence was. So the area behind the green fence, and we have, Ron and Douglas did a really good job at drafting and putting together an RFP to start getting some contractors to get that work done. That RFP is out. We have the deadline for questions next week. And then the deadline for submittals is the end of April. So that's something else that's moving along so that we can get that area improved and sort of enhanced for additional parking, as we had discussed through the whole restaurant negotiation process. Just
Great.
wanted to give you an update on that as well.
Thank you. Yep. Kevin, anything? I'm good. All right. All right. Our next meeting date is 1:30 PM, Monday, May the 3rd, 2021. So no executive session is needed today. And do I hear any motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Very good. You're off the record at 2:11.
It is 2:11. I heard Nicole.